6 years ago, Colt Ramsey left the only woman he ever loved. Now he was back, facing her in their dusty Montana town. But Willa Carver was a hardened widow now, and she remembered. She had not forgotten the night he just disappeared. He came to bury his past, but found it was still breathing. Stick with me to see how this story ends, y'all. And hey, tell me in the comments where you are from. The train pulled into Copper Bluff Station at 4 o'clock. Colt Ramsey was the very last man to step off of it. He stood with one bag, his boots worn out from wandering. The wind carried the smell of pine and old, painful memories. He stood still for a moment, just letting it all sink in. The town he swore he'd never see again had not changed. The general store still sat there, crooked on his foundation. An old piano tune drifted out from the nearby saloon. A few horses were tied to posts along the main street. An old man waved, but Colt did not wave back at him. He was only there because a telegram had found him. The words hit hard: "Your father is dead. Come home." It was signed by Harold Finch, the family's lawyer. But it did not matter who had sent the message. His powerful father, Silas Ramsey, was finally gone, and Colt was now the one and only heir to the ranch. He started walking, and the whole town stopped to watch. Colt ignored the whispers. He knew how these folks were. He made his way straight onto the livery stable. A boy, no older than 14, was shoveling hay inside. The kid looked up at the sound and froze right where he stood. "I need a horse," Colt said, his voice rough as a dirt road. The boy just stared. "You're him, ain't you? Colt Ramsey?" "Got a good mare," the boy mumbled. Colt tossed some coins. "Saddle her up." He stepped outside to wait and have a smoke. He struck a match right on his boot heel. The mountains were turning purple and gold. Somewhere out there was Ramsey Ridge. 20,000 acres his father built into an empire. And now the whole spread was his. He felt no pride, just a heavy stone in his chest. This ranch was the one thing he never wanted. But his dead father always got his way. The boy let out a saddled chestnut mare. Colt swung himself up and faced the mountains. "Welcome home, sir," the boy called after him. Colt just spurred the horse on and didn't look back. The ride took nearly 2 hours through the hills. Finally, he saw the ranch spread out below. The sun was gone, leaving a bruised-looking sky. The main house was made of timber and stone. Its windows glowed warmly with lamplight. His granddaddy's big barn stood there proud. Smoke from the cookhouse smelled of home. It looked the same, but felt all wrong. He rode on down, and the front door opened. A tall man with silver hair stepped out. "Well, I'll be," his voice carried. "Colt Ramsey." Colt dismounted. "Evening, Walter." Walter Briggs had been foreman here forever. The old man looked him up and down. "Son," Walter finally said, "you look like hell. Riding for 2 weeks." "That ain't the point, son," Walter said grimly. 6 years is a long time. 6 years without a word. Your pa died thinking you hated him." "Maybe I did." "Still ain't right," Walter said. "I didn't come here to talk about what's right, Walter." Colt's voice was flat. "I'm here to settle things and move on." Walter's shoulders slumped with resignation. "Yeah, hell no," he sighed. "I figured you'd say that." He gestured to the house. "Come on in. You look like you could use a hot meal." Colt stepped inside the home he hadn't seen in 6 years. It smelled the same: wood polish, old books, and tobacco. The old grandfather clock still ticked against the wall, steady as ever. His mother's portrait still watched him from over the fireplace. "Martha," Walter called out, "set another plate. We got company." A plump woman with graying hair appeared, wiping her hands on an apron. When she saw Colt, her face was a storm of shock, joy, and then anger. "Colt Ramsey," she said, her voice trembling. "You miserable boy." Then she pulled him into a hug so tight he couldn't breathe. "I'm sorry," he managed to say. Martha pulled back, tears in her eyes. "You ought to be sorry." She touched his face with a rough hand. "But you're here now. That's what matters." They ate a simple meal in the dining room. Roast beef and potatoes. Colt ate quietly, feeling their eyes on him. After the plates were cleared, Walter and Martha just watched him. Finally, Walter leaned back. "I suppose you want to know about the ranch." "I want to know everything." Walter nodded. "Your father kept things running. The herd's healthy. The finances are solid." He paused. "But there's been some trouble. Your pa bought up a lot of land." It didn't sit well with some folks. Which folks? Asked Colt. Walter looked at Martha, then back at Colt. The Carvers, mostly. The name hit Colt like a fist. He carefully set his coffee cup down. I thought the Carvers lost their land years ago. Most of it, Walter confirmed. The bank took everything but a small patch on the eastern edge. Walter chose his next words carefully. That's where Willa's been living. Willa. The name struck Colt to the core. Willa Carver, the girl with hair like sunshine and eyes like a coming storm. The one who met him by the creek under a high moon. She had kissed him under the old oak and promised him forever. But he left her with no goodbye. She's still here, he said, his own voice sounding hollow. She never left, Martha said gently. She stayed, even after all that. Married Tom Wheeler a year after you left. He was a good man, she added. Died in a rock slide 2 winters back. Colt shut his eyes. Willa was a widow. She's been working that land alone, Walter said. Got about 60 head. She's holding on. And my father? Colt asked. Walter looked uncomfortable. You ought to talk to Harold Finch. There are some papers you need to see. What papers? Colt pressed. Legal matters, Walter said, shaking his head. Just talk to Finch. He's expecting you. Colt saw it was no use pushing him for more. Walter had said all he was going to. All right, Colt said. Tomorrow. He stood up. Martha pointed. Your old room. I kept it ready for you. Colt just nodded, unable to speak. He climbed the familiar stairs. It was the same room he'd left all those years ago. The door still creaked. Nothing inside had changed a bit. The old iron bed, the quilt his mother made, the desk by the window. His old books were still sitting right there on the shelf. He walked to the window and looked out at the moonlit pastures. Somewhere out there, on her little piece of land, was Willa Carver. He wondered if she was awake, staring at that same old sky. Or maybe, he thought, she'd forgotten him completely. Perhaps that would be for the best. He sat on the bed's edge. He didn't even take his boots off, just sat there in the dark. He knew he would have to face her. There was no avoiding it now. Whatever his father left behind, whatever those papers said, she was part of it. Willa was always going to be a part of it. That's how the past works. You can run for 6 years and ride 1,000 miles, but it will always be there, just waiting for you to come on home. After a restless night, Colt found Walter in the chilly barn before dawn. The old foreman was with a mare getting ready to foal. Walter said the lawyer's office was above the bank and opened at 9. Colt asked what would happen now. Walter had been foreman for 32 years. He told Colt the ranch's future was now up to him. Then he warned him, this land has its own plans, son. At the lawyer's office, Colt learned the estate was huge. His father had bought up nearly the entire valley. But Mr. Finch also mentioned some unorthodox arrangements. When Colt pressed him, Finch pulled out a leather folder. It had documents about the old Carver property. The place was now owned by Mrs. Willow Wheeler. Turns out Colt's father had bought her mortgage 3 years ago. He had secretly paid for her feed, vet bills, and fence repairs. Colt just sat there trying to make sense of it all. The lawyer waited, letting the surprising news sink in. His father had not been the man he thought he was. Colt felt a tightness in his chest as he looked at the papers. For the next hour, Finch explained every detail. The numbers were staggering, far more than Colt could have imagined. His father had become the most powerful man in the valley. He was a shrewd man, Finch said, but complicated. Colt asked him to speak plainly about the Carver Ranch. The lawyer adjusted his spectacles and took a deep breath. He explained the letters and payments in the folder. It showed his father's deep involvement with Willow Wheeler's ranch. Colt's jaw tightened as he realized what this all meant. His father didn't just buy the mortgage, he propped her up. He had spent a fortune keeping her ranch from failing. The question was, why would he do that for his biggest rival? He said, your father did it anonymously through my office. Colt just stared at the folder. He never told me why, Finch admitted, but that mortgage is now part of your inheritance. This means Mrs. Wheeler owes a whole lot of money directly to you. She has no earthly idea. She only knows the bank sold her debt to a stranger. Your father was real particular. He wanted his name kept completely out of it. Colt finally reached out, opening the folder to his father's unmistakable handwriting. The papers showed it all, the secret purchase and the payments he made for her. Silas had built legal walls around her property so no one could run her off. But underneath all the legal papers was a sealed envelope with a single word on it. The name was Colt. He picked it up and saw the wax seal was untouched. "Your father left that for you," Finch said quietly. "Gave it to me 2 months before he passed. His instructions were clear. Give it to Colt only after he was in the ground." The envelope felt heavy with unspoken truths. "Is there anything else?" Colt asked. "Just one more thing." Finch pulled a rolled-up map from his desk drawer. He spread it between them. "This here is the eastern boundary of Ramsey Ridge. As you can see, Mrs. Wheeler's land shares a water line with your property. That little creek is the only reliable water source she's got for her cattle." Colt's brow furrowed. "That creek is on my land." "Technically, yes, it is. But your father granted her a legal easement. It runs with the land, so it's permanent." "Why would I want to change that?" Colt asked. Finch just shrugged his shoulders. "I'm just telling you the facts." Colt folded the map and put it in his coat. As he headed for the door, Finch called out, "Mr. Ramsey, she has been struggling something fierce. The last few winters were hard, and she lost a good part of her herd to sickness. She's applied for a loan from the bank twice now. They turned her down flat." Colt stopped with his hand on the door. "Why?" Finch's voice was plain. "Because she is a woman and a widow with no man to vouch for her. You know how it is." Colt did not respond. He just opened the door and walked into the cold morning air. His father's secrets felt heavy in his pocket, and the name Willa burned like a brand in his mind. He found her that afternoon, though he swore he hadn't meant to find her. He told himself he was just riding the property line, but his horse knew better and took him right to her. Down below, he saw smoke rising from the cabin, and then he saw her. Willa was wrestling a young calf, her hair pulled back in a simple braid. With her worn clothes and muddy boots, she was nothing like the girl he remembered. This woman was harder, tougher, shaped by years of loss and struggle. She wouldn't bend, but she might just break. She looked up as he reached the ridge, and they just stared at each other. Then she turned back to the calf as if he wasn't even there. Colt rode down toward her. By the time he got there, she was done. She wiped her hands on a rag, not even looking at him. "Willa," he said. "Mr. Ramsey." Her voice was polite but completely empty. "Can we talk? I am working." She finally met his gaze, and it hit him like a punch. Her eyes were different. They were gray as winter clouds, with none of the warmth he remembered. "I know why you are here," she said. "The whole town knows your father is gone. You have come to claim your inheritance." "Congratulations. What do you want, Colt?" Hearing her say his name was full of 6 years of anger and hurt. "If you are here to make peace, to ease your own conscience, you can save your breath." She stepped closer, and he could see the lines that time had etched around her eyes. "Why now?" she asked. "After all these years, why are you here?" He wanted to tell her his father left papers proving he had been protecting her. He wanted to say he never stopped thinking about her, that seeing her again took his breath away. But he could not say any of that. "Not yet. Because I needed to know you were all right," he said finally. She laughed, a short, bitter sound that held no humor at all. "Oh, all right?" She spread her arms, showing him the rundown cabin and the muddy corral. "Look around, Colt. Does this look all right to you?" "No," he said quietly. "It does not." "Then you have your answer." She started for the cabin. "Close the gate on your way out." "I am not leaving." Oh, she stopped but did not turn, her back as stiff as a board. "You always were good at that," she said, her voice low and tight. "Staying when you should not, and disappearing when it mattered most." "Willa, let me explain." "No," the word was like a whip crack. "You do not get to explain. Not after 6 years. Left to say, you just left me, Colt. You left without a single word. I waited so long, but you never came back." "I couldn't." "Couldn't what?" "Send a letter? Let me know you were even alive?" "I thought you were gone for good, Colt. I grieved for you. Then I found out. You just chose to leave. What we had meant so little you couldn't even say goodbye. It was not like that at all. Then tell me how it was." Her tears started to fall. "Tell me why you had to break my heart and just ride away." Colt got off his horse, taking a slow step toward her. "I was protecting you." "Protecting me from what?" His voice was rough. From my own father. From what he would have done to your family if I had stayed with you. Willa looked confused. What are you talking about? The night I left, my father told me he knew everything about us. He said if I did not leave you and never return, he would destroy your family. My family was already broken. Not like this. He had your father's debts. He was holding them like a weapon. He swore he would call every single one in. He was going to take everything your family had left and grind it to nothing. He promised that no one in this valley would ever hire a carver again. She was quiet for a long moment. And you believed a word he said? I knew my father, Willa. He was not a man who bluffed. I knew what he could do. So you just left. I left because staying would have hurt you so much more. He stepped closer. I have regretted that choice every single day, but I will not apologize for protecting you the only way I knew how. Willa looked so tired, so worn down by all the years of hardship. He just wanted to hold her and promise her everything would be okay. You should probably go, she finally said. Let me help you out. I do not need your help. Maybe you do not, but I am offering it to you anyway. She looked at him, her pride fighting with what she needed. The fence on the north pasture is down. That big storm knocked it over. I have not had a minute to fix it. He said, I will handle it. I cannot pay you. I did not ask for any pay. She gave him a small nod, a tiny bit of hope. Tools are in the barn, she said plainly. She turned and walked inside the cabin. After 6 long years, it was a start. Colt found the tools and got to work. He fixed that fence all afternoon long. It was hard work, the honest kind. A small victory in a broken world. By sundown, his hands were good and raw. He dusted himself off and walked back. Willa was waiting for him on the porch. In the dusk, she looked like the past. Fence is done, he told her simply. Come on inside, she said at last. I've got some coffee on the stove. The cabin was small but clean and warm. A fire crackled in the old hearth. Sit down, she told him, pointing to a chair. She served him a bowl of hot stew. They ate together in a thick silence. When the plates were finally cleared away, they sat across from each other. Tell me about him, Willow said softly. Colt stared down into his coffee. He was a hard man, Colt finally said. But did he love you? She asked. He looked up, right into her eyes. He spoke in land, not in love. It was the only way he knew. Willow nodded, a sad understanding. My own father was just like that. He's gone. Her voice was steady, but he heard the old pain underneath. 3 years after you left, his heart just gave out in the barn. I'm sorry, he said. Don't be. It is old news now. I am good at burying things, she added, and they sat in a heavy quiet. The wind howled outside as the first stars began to prick the dark. I ought to head out, Colt finally said. It is a long ride home. She walked him to the door, then stopped him on the threshold. Colt, why are you really here? He thought about making up some easy story, but he just could not lie, not to her, not after all this time. Because I had to see you, but he said, 6 years ago I made a choice. And I have spent every day since then wondering if it was wrong. I had to know if I destroyed it all or if there is anything left of us. She was quiet for a long time. Then her fingers briefly touched his hand. His heart just about stopped. There is something left, she whispered. I am just not sure what. Then she stepped back and closed the door. He stood there a moment, then got on his horse and rode into the night. Under all those stars, he felt a small flicker of something like hope. It was not forgiveness, but it was a beginning. The next few days were tense. Colt spent his mornings with Harold Finch, the family's longtime lawyer. They sorted through the mountain of papers Silas had left behind. Just untangling all the ranch accounts took them 3 whole days. Silas Ramsey had kept perfect records of every deal he ever made. The sheer size of his father's empire was just staggering to see. But it was the letters that kept Colt up at night. He finally opened his. He sat alone in his father's study, the place he had ruled from like a king. The old clock struck midnight as he broke the seal with an unsteady hand. Inside was a letter written in his father's cramped, perfect script. It was the same hand that had signed contracts and ruined good families. A hand that changed this whole valley with ink. Son, the letter began, if you are reading this, I am dead. You know, sentiment was never my style. Son, there are things you need to know. What I threatened that night was a lie. You know my pride, but I was bluffing. I never meant a single word of it. Colt had to stop reading, his vision blurred. All that pain and distance was for nothing. He kept reading. The truth is, I was scared. I was scared of you marrying a Carver. Our family feud has always run deep. I truly thought I was protecting you, but I was wrong and I pushed you away. After you left, I watched over Willa. I saw her suffer and I saw her fight. She fought to hold on to her land. That woman has more grit than any man. So I did what I could and bought her mortgage. I paid her bills and protected her water rights. I did it all, hoping you would come home. The ranch is yours now to do with as you will. Just know this, son, I have always been proud. Colt read the letter 3 times, each word a blow. His father's lie had driven him from his only love. But that same man had secretly protected her. Now the question was, could Willa forgive him? 3 long and quiet weeks went by. He saddled his horse a dozen times to see her, but shame and fear always held him back. Then a hard October storm swept the valley. It howled and dumped 6 inches of heavy snow. Walter rode in with news. The east fence was down. Must be 200 yards down, Walter said. That's the boundary with Willa's land. Colt knew. Walter gave him a look. Her cattle are already mixing with ours. If we don't fix it, sorting them out will be hell. Colt grabbed his coat. Get a crew. Already done, Walter's voice stopped him at the door. But Colt, she's going to be there too. She called and offered her own hands to help. Said it's her cattle causing the trouble. Colt stood very still. How'd she sound? Too proud to ask for help, too smart to turn it down. Walter almost smiled. Sounds like someone else I know. The next morning dawned cold and clear. Colt rode out with 4 of his hands, their horse's breath like steam. Their saddlebags were loaded with posts and wire, everything needed for the rebuild. They reached the boundary just as the sun rose over the peaks. The pastures were painted gold and pink. Willa was already there, buttoned clear to her chin, a wool scarf wrapped tight. 2 fellows stood with her, and they had the look of ranch hands. Her expression gave nothing away as Colt approached. Mornin', she said. Mornin'. He stopped his horse nearby. Appreciate you coming. My responsibility. She pointed at the tangled mess of wire. Figured we'd work from both ends. Meet in the middle. We can sort the herds as we go. Makes sense. She turned her horse without another word. Colt dismounted and got to work. The hours that followed were brutal. The ground was frozen solid under the snow. Setting new posts was nearly impossible, and the wire snagged on everything. The cold seeped into their bones, numbing their fingers and stiffening their joints. But slowly, methodically, the new fence began to take shape across the land. By noon, they called a break. His men gathered around a small fire. They warmed their hands and passed a flask. Willa's crew did the same 50 yards away. Their own fire sent a thin column of smoke to the sky. Colt found himself watching her. She was laughing at something one of her men said, her head thrown back. He hadn't seen her laugh like that since he'd been back. A crack in her armor. She must have felt his gaze because she turned and looked right at him. The laughter faded from her face. She said something to her men and started walking toward him. Colt met her halfway in the trampled snow. Your men work hard, she said. So do yours. They ought to. I try to pay them right. She hugged her arms to her chest. But things have been tight. I know. Her eyes narrowed on him. How in the world would you know anything about my money? Colt paused for a moment. He had not planned to tell her, not like this, but the words came out. My father, he said slowly. He left me some papers about this ranch. Willa went completely still. What kind of papers? The kind that show my father holds your mortgage. He has held it for the past 3 years. He paid your bills when you could not make them. He watched her expression shift from total confusion to pure, unadulterated shock. Then anger flashed in her eyes. I only found this out a few weeks ago myself. That is impossible, she stated, her voice tight. The bank sold it through Harold Finch's office. All anonymous. Colt pulled a folded paper from inside his coat. He used Harold to keep it a secret from all of us. It is all right here. Willa stared at the paper like it was a coiled snake, then slowly took it from him. She read the whole thing in silence. When she looked up, her face was a complete mystery. Wait to his statement, she asked, her voice raw. Your father spent years trying to destroy my family. I do not think he really hated you. Colt then brought out another piece of paper. It was a letter. He left this for me, he explained, holding it out to her. But I reckon you are the one who should read it. Willa took the letter from him. Her hands were not quite steady as she carefully unfolded it. She read through his father's cramped handwriting, taking in every single word. When she was done, she did not say a thing. She just stood there, staring at the paper. Colt took a small step toward her. Willa, please say something. He was bluffing, she whispered, her voice barely there. All those threats to ruin my family, it was all a bluff. Yes. And you believed him? I did. So you left. She finally looked him straight in the eye. Tears were streaming down her face, silent and steady, and she did not bother to wipe them away. You left me to protect me from a danger that was not even real. I did not know, he said, his voice desperate. Willa, I swear to you, if I had any idea— What? She demanded, crumpling the letters in her fist. What would you have done differently? Would you have stayed? Would you have fought for me and married me anyway? Yes, he said without a single bit of hesitation. Yes, in a heartbeat I would have. She stared at him for a long, terrible moment, then threw the papers right at his chest. Willa, please, She held up a hand, turning her back to him. Just stop, I need some time to think. I do not know, she said, her shoulders rigid. Right now we have a fence to fix, so let us just work. He picked up the crumpled letters. They finished the last of the fence. The work was done in a hard silence. Willa rode off without a backward glance. That looked rough, Walter observed. It was, Colt finally said. You can't outrun this kind of trouble. Walter tipped his hat and rode away. The only way out is through it. Colt just sat, watching the sun fall. A week later, she came to him. He was in the study, late at night. The house was still, full of shadows. Martha appeared. You have a visitor. Mrs. Wheeler is in the parlor. He found her by the parlor window. She wore a simple, dark blue dress. Her hair was pinned up proper. I've been thinking, she said quietly. She turned to face him at last. He saw the girl he used to know. That old fire was still in her eyes. And I am angry, she said. At your father, at you, at myself. Mostly for all the years that we lost. She stepped closer, closing the space. But anger doesn't fix a thing. It's just a stone in your chest. So what do we do? Colt asked. I don't know. I can't carry it alone. It hurts to pretend I forgot everything. He took her hand gently. I never did, Willa. Not for one single day out on the trail. I told myself I was moving on, but I was just running. But I am finally done running now. He kissed her hand. I am not asking for forgiveness. I just want you to know I am here to stay. For whatever you need. Her eyes searched his face. She was looking for the truth in his words. I don't know if I can trust you again, Colt. What if you leave? I won't leave you. I promise I will try, every single day. He gave her space. I'll be here when you are ready. A small smile finally appeared. My barn roof is damaged, and I do not have the money for hired help. But I will be here tomorrow before sunup. You can count on it. She paused at the door, one hand on the frame. Colt, thank you for showing me the truth, and for not giving up on us. Then she was gone. He was left alone with his pounding heart and a new hope. True to his word, he was there before dawn. They worked on that barn for 3 cold days. They shared meals, and they talked about everything. Slowly, carefully, they started to rebuild what was broken. He told her about his years on the cattle trails. She talked about her marriage and saving the ranch. Tom was a good husband, she said quietly. He was kind. Colt had to ask, did you love him? She thought for a bit. I loved the security he gave me. Then she looked at him. But it was never the same. He knew what she meant. On the 3rd day, the roof was done. They stood together in the fading light, looking at their handiwork. It's good, Willa said. Better than it was. That barn ought to stand for another 20 years. Can't say the same for my fences, though. She nodded toward the north pasture where a rail was hanging crooked. Or the corral, he cut in softly. I know. I've seen it, and I want to help. Not from guilt, and not because my father said so. I'm helping because I care about you. He paused, finding his words. Because helping you feels right. The first right thing in 6 years. She was quiet for a spell, her breath a small cloud in the cool air. There's a heap of work to do. More than I can handle by myself. Then let's do it together, he said, as partners. She turned to face him, her eyes searching his. What do you really want, Colt? It was the one question he'd been hoping to avoid. He wanted her, the way things used to be, but he couldn't say that. Not after all the lies and the long years of silence. Not yet. I want to earn your trust, he said instead. One day at a time, however long that takes. Willa held his gaze, then gave one firm nod. Tomorrow, she said, the corral, 6 o'clock. I'll be here. I know you will. He watched her walk to the cabin. Colt rode home in the twilight, feeling a hope he hadn't felt in a very long time. The weeks that came after were the hardest Colt had ever worked, and the happiest he'd ever been. Every day, Chevrolet, they rebuilt the corral, mended fences, and doctored the herd. The work was tough and endless, but it felt good and honest. But the evenings were what he treasured most, sitting together on Willa's porch. They'd watch the sun dip behind the mountains and talk about everything and nothing at all. She told him about her 3 sisters, all spread out across the territory. He told her about the men on the trail who taught him how to survive. Little by little, they started to remember why they had fallen in love. Do you remember the first time we met? Willa asked one evening, her voice soft. Colt smiled. The church social. You wore a pretty yellow dress. It was my mother's. You were by the punch bowl looking like you'd rather be anywhere else, she laughed. I did, he chuckled. All those mamas trying to marry off their sons. Then some rancher's boy asked you to dance. She gave him a sideways glance. You weren't arrogant. Well, maybe a little. I was just plain terrified, Colt admitted. You were the prettiest girl I had ever seen. I couldn't think of a smart thing to say, so I just said, nice punch. They both laughed. We were too young, she said, her voice heavy. Maybe, he said, but I knew even back then. From the moment I saw you, I knew it was you. She took his hand. Me too. That's what made it so hard. Knowing what we could have been. November brought a cold wind and the threat of snow. Willa's ranch was shaping up better than expected. The fences were strong and the barn roof was solid. But one problem remained. The bank turned me down again. Over coffee, he asked, what did they tell you this time? The same old story, that I am a poor risk. Her jaw set hard, that I'm a woman without a husband. I've got 60 head of cattle out there, Colt. So without a loan for feed, I'm gonna lose everything. He stood up. You are not gonna lose this place. How can you be so sure? Because I will not let you. This is not charity, Willa. This is a partnership. Everyone knows your breeding stock is the best in the valley. My ranch has money, but we need new bloodlines. Together, we could build something neither one of us could alone. A real partnership, 50-50, shared risk, shared reward. And what happens if it all goes south, she asked. He smiled a little. Then we fail together. But we will not. I have seen what you can do, Willa. You are a survivor. A slow smile spread across her face. You are dead serious. And what about the personal side of things? One day at a time. The business stays separate. I have conditions. First, I make all decisions on my cattle. Done, he said. Second, we split all profits down the middle. Agreed. She took a breath. And third, if this partnership fails, we walk away clean. The thought stung Colt, but he understood her caution. She'd been hurt before and needed a safe way out. He agreed with one condition. We both go all in. No holding back because we are scared of what might happen. I'm asking you to trust me completely, Willa. She looked at their hands, then whispered, all in. She leaned forward and gave his cheek a soft, quick kiss. All in, she murmured against his skin. Lord help us both. The next weeks were a whirlwind of hard work. Their new partnership was a surprise to the whole town. They moved her best cattle to Ramseyland and hired more hands. Word of their deal spread through the valley like wildfire. Some folks thought it was smart, but others started to gossip. They spun all kinds of tales about the Ramsey boy and the widow. Colt paid them no mind, with winter just around the corner. He had 1,000 things to do before the first big snow. But one confrontation he could not get out of. It was outside the general store when a voice called his name. He turned to see the three Garrett brothers looking for trouble. Marcus, James, and young Will ran a ranch on the north end. They were no friends to his family, and it showed on their faces. "Heard you're getting mighty cozy with the Carver widow." Marcus, the oldest, sneered at him from under his thick beard. "My business arrangements are my own business," Colt said calmly. "Not when you start acting like your daddy," Marcus shot back. "Your old man squeezed folks out of this valley for years. Now you are back using that widow's land to get bigger. Why else would your daddy hold her mortgage for 3 years?" That question hit Colt hard. He wanted something from her. "Sure he did," Marcus scoffed with a bitter laugh. "Believe what you want, Ramsey," he said, turning back to his wagon. "We are not finished," Marcus said, grabbing his arm and spinning him around. "You think this valley will just bow down to another Ramsey?" Colt looked at the hand on his arm, then met his eyes. "Take your hand off me." "Or what?" The air grew thick as the other brothers began to move in. Just then a new voice cut through the tension in the street. "Is there a problem here?" Willa asked, emerging from the general store. She took one look at the scene and moved to stand right by Colt's side. Marcus let go of Colt's arm. "This does not concern you, Mrs. Wheeler. Anything concerning my partner concerns me," she said, lifting her chin. He tried to save face. "Just a friendly chat with your business partner." "Consider him warned," Willa said, her voice as cold as ice. "We have work to do." She took Colt's arm and steered him toward his wagon, leaving the brothers in the dust. They were well out of town before he finally spoke. "Thank you. Do not thank me yet. The Garretts will not let this go." "I know. They are scared, Colt. They think you are going to be just like your father. So they are going to fight back." "Let them," Colt said, his voice like steel. "I am not my father. I just want to build something that is made to last." "Something like what?" He turned and looked at her. "Something like us." Willa held his gaze for a long moment. Then she smiled. "Then we better make it worth fighting for." That night, Colt was riding home when he saw a strange glow on the horizon. It was a flickering orange light that could only mean a fire. He arrived to find Willa and her men already fighting the flames with a bucket brigade. He jumped in to help, hauling water until his arms burned from the effort. By the time they got the fire under control, the building was only charred timber. "Is everyone all right?" Colt asked, wiping the soot from his tired face. Willa nodded, her clothes scorched. "The hands are fine. The animals are safe." She looked at the smoldering ruins with a grim expression. "But I have my suspicions." "The Garretts? Suspicions?" "Maybe," she said, shaking her head. "I cannot prove anything." He studied the muddy ground where the snow had melted. At the edge of the light, he saw something. Hoof prints, fresh ones, heading north. "Willa," he said in a low voice. "Come look." She joined him, studying the tracks. "3 horses," she said, "moving fast. The Garretts have 3 sons." Their eyes met. "We cannot prove a thing. And the sheriff is bought and paid for by Marcus Garrett." "Then we handle it ourselves," Colt said, looking toward the mountains. The fire had changed things between them, but not how he expected. He figured she would regret partnering with him, seeing the risk. Instead, it forged a bond that was stronger than steel. They worked side by side. As they cleaned up the wreckage, they rebuilt more than just the barn. The last of the old walls between them finally started to crumble. It happened on a cold night, 3 weeks before the solstice. They sat by her fire listening to the wind howl. "Thank you," she said suddenly. Colt looked up from his coffee cup. "For what?" "For staying," she said, "for not giving up on me, even when I pushed you away." She looked him in the eye. "Is that what I am to you? Something worth having?" He set down his cup and moved closer. "You're worth everything, Willa. You always have been." Her breath caught in her throat. She slowly reached up and touched his face. Her fingers traced the line of his jaw. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I know," he said gently. "I am scared too. What if we are just fooling ourselves?" "Then at least we will know we tried," he said, holding her hand to his cheek. "But I do not think we are. I think we have spent 6 long years running from this. And it is time to stop." A single tear ran down her face. "I never stopped loving you. Not even when I hated you. Not even when I married Tom. I told myself I was over you." Her eyes were bright with tears. "I tried so hard to forget you, Colt, but I could not. You were always there, in every sunset, in every quiet moment." She pressed her fingers to his lips. "I am not saying I forgive you. Not yet. There is still so much pain between us." She breathed. "But I am tired of fighting it. I am tired of being alone, and I am tired of pretending I do not want you." Colt kissed her palm softly. "Then stop pretending," he said. And she did. It was like finally coming home. The kiss was gentle at first. It was like they were finding something they thought was lost forever. Then it grew deeper. All their years of hope poured into that moment. When they parted, they were both shaking. "We are doing this," Willa said firmly. "And we are doing this," Colt agreed. She gave him a real smile. It was the same smile that made him fall in love with her all those years ago. Outside, a fierce wind began to howl as the snow started to fall. But held in each other's arms, Colt and Willa felt no cold at all. December hit the valley hard. The snow fell for 3 days straight, covering the pastures completely. The mountain roads became pure ice. The cold was bitter and deep. The creek froze over. Even the toughest cattle huddled close for any warmth. Colt had seen some hard winters before. He was a survivor. But this storm felt different. It felt more like a personal warning. He stood on his porch and watched the snow pile high against the barn. He could only think about Willa. She was 3 miles away with just 2 ranch hands. Their new partnership was going well, but this weather forced them apart. He had not seen her in 4 days, and each day felt like a year. "This storm is not letting up," Walter said, coming out onto the porch. "The radio said another front is moving in. It is coming from the north. It could be the worst we have seen in 20 years. "How are our cattle?" Colt asked. "They are holding on. We have enough feed for about another week if we are careful." Walter looked where Colt was staring. "You are thinking about her." It was not a question. "She is out there." "She is tougher than she looks," Walter said. He put a hand on Colt's shoulder. "I know you want to go, but those roads are death traps. You will not make it halfway." "I know," Colt said, "but I do not like it." "That is how you know that you care," Walter replied. "Come inside. Martha has made soup." Colt went in, but his mind stayed out in the snow with Willa. He was worried she was fighting to survive. The storm broke on the 5th morning. Colt was in the saddle and ready to ride before the last flake even hit the ground. He had barely slept, just pacing and staring out at the endless white. "Be careful," Martha said, handing him a bundle of food. "Han BDBM." Her face was full of worry. "Those drifts are deep, Colt. That cold will kill you." "I'll be fine." "You better be." She gave him a hard look. "That woman is counting on you. Don't you dare fail her." Colt headed out. The ride through the waist-deep snow was a pure nightmare. The biting cold cut right through his coat as his horse pushed through the drifts. His horse stumbled twice, and he worried only about the precious time he was losing. It took him nearly 3 hours to cover just 3 miles to Willa's land. When he finally saw her valley, his heart sank right into his boots. The barn was completely collapsed, crushed flat under the weight of the snow. Its roof was broken like a spine. Her cattle were crying out in the pasture. A thin wisp of smoke came from the cabin, but there was no other sign of life. "Willa!" he yelled, spurring his horse on. The silence that answered was terrifying. He jumped from the saddle and pounded on the cabin door. "Willa, are you in there?" The door swung open to reveal Ben Tucker, one of her hands, his face pale with fear. "Mr. Ramsey, thank God," Ben said, pulling him inside. "She's hurt real bad." "Where is she?" Colt demanded. "In the back. A beam hit her when the roof went." Ben's voice cracked. "We got her out, but I don't know." Colt pushed past him. He stopped dead in the bedroom doorway. Willa was lying still on the bed. She was pale as a ghost, her arm in a makeshift sling, with dried blood on her head. Her eyes were shut tight and her breathing was weak and shallow. "Willa," he whispered, kneeling and taking her good hand. "Willa, can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered, then opened slowly, looking right through him for a moment. Then her eyes focused, and relief washed over her face. "Colt," she breathed. "You came." "Of course I came," he said, pressing her hand to his lips, not caring who saw. "What happened?" he asked. "The snow," she winced. "Too much weight on the old roof. I was getting the cattle out when it all came down. Some are still trapped in there." "How many?" he asked. 10, maybe 12, she said, her voice finding some strength. "A big beam pinned me. Ben and Jake got me free, but we couldn't get to the others." "Are they still alive?" "I think so. I could hear them for a while," she said, her jaw tight. "But it's been hours now." "We will get them out," Colt said, rising to his feet. His mind was already working. "Ben, where's Jake?" "He's out with the herd, trying to keep them calm." "Get him," Colt told Ben. He turned to Willa, his fear plain to see. His brave face slipped away. "I thought I'd lost you," he said quietly. "I am fine," she said, touching his face. "Just battered is all. Now stop that look and go save my cattle." He almost smiled. "Yes, ma'am." "And Colt?" Her hand gripped his tighter. "Be careful. That thing is not stable." "It will be." He kissed her forehead. "I am not losing you now." Not after everything. He stood tall and walked toward the wreckage. The next few hours were a complete nightmare. The barn had caved in. It was a maze of broken wood and twisted metal that groaned in the wind. Below it all, cattle were crying out, pushing the men to work faster. They started on the edges, clearing snow and debris to make a way in. The work was backbreaking. Every beam they moved uncovered two more. Ben's hands were bleeding through his gloves, and Jake took a hit to the face. A piece of wood left him half blind with blood, but they kept right on going. "Over here," Ben shouted all of a sudden. "I can see one of them." Colt scrambled over the pile. A cow was on its side, her eyes wild with terror. She was pinned by a heavy beam across her back legs. "We have to lift it," Colt said. The three men got around the beam. "On three," Colt grunted. "1, 2, 3, 2." They heaved with all their strength. For a moment, the beam did not move. Then slowly it began to rise. "Keep at it!" Colt's voice was ragged. It lifted another inch, and the cow scrambled to its feet, running free. "That is one down," Jake gasped, dropping his end. "How many more we got?" "Too many," Colt said, wiping sweat from his brow. "But we are not stopping. Not until we get every last one." They worked on through the evening. One by one, they pulled the frightened cattle from the disaster. Soon they had to dig deeper into the most unstable part of the collapse. By nightfall, they had rescued 8 animals. 4 more were still trapped inside. "We need some light," Colt said. "I will go get some lanterns." Ben stumbled toward the cabin. Colt leaned on the wall, gasping for breath. Every muscle in his body screamed, but he could not stop. A hand touched his shoulder. He turned. Willa stood right there. She was hurt bad, but determined. "You ought to be inside," he said. "So should you." 4 are still left. "The whole thing's a death trap," he sorted. "Any move could bring it all down." "Then we're going about it wrong. We've got to brace that east side first." "With what?" he asked, plumb tuckered out. "Timber from the sheds. It's safer that way." He knew she was right about that. "All right, ma'am, tell us what to do." Willa directed them all through the night. They built supports before they dug in. Slow work, but her plan was working. By dawn, they finally reached them. 3 were alive. Her favorite calf was not. She just stood over the poor thing. She knelt down, whispering a soft goodbye. Her eyes were dry, but her heart was broke. "Let's get the others under a roof. We can mourn later. There's work to do." So they moved the survivors to shelter. Ben and Jake tended to the animals. Colt helped a weary Willa back home. He set her down by the warm fire. "It's over now," he said. "Is it?" "The barn is gone. We will rebuild." "With what?" she asked, her voice cracking. "No," he said firmly. "You ain't quitting. I did not work all night just for you to quit now." He held her hands firm. "We are partners. Your fight is my fight, and we are not failing." He looked her straight in the eye. "When I left 6 years ago, I thought I was protecting you. But I was just a coward who ran away. I lost the best thing in my life. I was, he said, but not anymore. He kissed her hands. I am not running this time, Willa. Not from anything. Whatever comes our way, we will face it together. Just you and me, the way it should have been. She was crying, but she was also smiling. You are impossible, she whispered. She took a deep, shaky breath. I love you, Colt. I never stopped loving you. The words just floored him. He had prayed to hear those words, but the reality of them hit him hard. His heart felt like it was about to burst. Say it again, he whispered. I love you, she said, laughing through her tears. Since I was 17. I loved you when you left, and I loved you every day you were gone. I even loved you when you came back. He pulled her into a careful hug. He held her tight, mindful of her shoulder, and just breathed her in. I love you too, he said, his voice thick with unspent emotion. I have loved you every single day of those 6 years, every long mile. I was always looking for you, Willa. You have always been the one. They held each other by the fire as the cold winter wind howled outside. The world was harsh, but in that moment, nothing else mattered to them. They were together again, and this time it was for good. The next days tested them. Willa's cracked collarbone healed slowly, but she simply refused to rest. There was just far too much that needed to be done around the ranch. The wreckage of the barn had to be cleared. Colt split his time between ranches. He worked like a man possessed, mornings at his place, then afternoons at hers. He helped her men salvage what they could. Their business deal began to change. It became something more, something they did not have the words for. No promises were made, just hard work, side by side. Their actions said it all. But that peace was short-lived. Walter rode up one morning with some news, with a face like a thundercloud. Trouble, he said plainly. It is the Garretts. Colt's stomach tightened. What kind of move? They are buying up all the local debt. They have got paper on half the valley now, Walter said, handing him a document. And a moment ago, they just bought this. Colt unfolded it, and his face went pale. It was Willa's mortgage, the one his father should have left to him. How? The word was strangled. I thought my father's estate. Finch sold it, Walter said. There was some kind of loophole about the original terms. The Garretts found it. And Finch folded instead of fighting them. That low-down snake, Colt whispered. That miserable, spineless snake. It gets worse, Walter said, glancing toward the cabin. The Garretts are calling in the note. The full payment is due in 30 days. If she cannot pay, they take the land and everything on it. Colt stood frozen. In 30 days, everything Willa had fought for would be gone. Her home, her future, all of it would be taken away by men who only cared about power. Does she know? Not yet. I figured you should be the one to tell her. Colt nodded and squared his shoulders. He walked to the cabin door and went inside. Willa took the news better than he expected. She sat at her kitchen table reading the paper with a calm, blank face. She set it down and looked at him. I wondered how long it would take. You knew? I had a feeling, she said, looking out at the snow. After the fire, it all seemed planned. And the Garretts had been circling this place for months, just waiting for their moment. Why did you not tell me? Because there was nothing you could do to stop it. She turned to him. I have been fighting this battle for years, Colt. Long before you. I knew that one day I would lose. You have not lost just yet. 30 days. She laughed a humorless laugh. I cannot get that money in 30 days. The bank will not lend to me. I do not have anything to sell or anyone to borrow from. She held her hands up. I am all out of options. No, you are not, Colt said. He crossed the room and took her hands. You have me, Willa. I have the ranch, the accounts, more than enough to pay off this mortgage. Willa's expression hardened. I will not take your charity. It is not charity. I have spent my whole life fighting to prove I can stand on my own 2 feet. It is you accepting help from someone who cares, he said, his voice full of frustration. This ain't about pride, Willa. Her eyes flashed. You're a Ramsey. You don't understand nothing. I had nothing for 6 long years. All that money was empty. The only thing I ever wanted was you. Her anger finally started to fade. This is about 2 people. And I won't let Garrett destroy us. A long silence passed between them. They'll just find another way, she said. They want us gone for good. Then we stop them first, Colt said. We'll beat them at their own game. He spent weeks with Harold Finch. They pored over old legal papers. Colt soon found the Garrett's secret. Their power was built on shady deals. They used debt to force folks out. Dozens of families lost their land. Colt tracking down 3 of the men. They were broken, but held grudges. A rancher named Hank Morrison spoke. They forged my loan documents. The sheriff was in their pocket. Can you prove any of it? Colt asked. Hank's eyes glinted. I kept copies. The others had their own stories too. Colt spread the proof on the desk. This is enough for a real court. Folks warned him that going after the Garretts was dangerous business. But Colt knew it was time to shine a light on their shady dealings. The showdown happened on a bitter, cold morning, with the whole town of Copper Bluff watching. Colt had asked Marcus Garrett to meet about Mrs. Wheeler's mortgage. He rightly figured that Marcus's pride wouldn't let him miss a chance to gloat. Marcus rode in with his brothers, their horses puffing steam in the cold. They faced Colt, who stood all alone. Ramsey, Marcus sneered, you come here to beg for more time? Colt's voice was steady. No, I'm here with an offer. His brother James just snorted. What in the world could you offer us? Colt pulled out a fat envelope. I've got proof of your family's fraud and theft. Sworn statements, forged contracts, going back 10 years. There's enough here to put all 3 of y'all in prison. Marcus's nasty smile just vanished. Colt tossed the papers at his feet. Go on, take a look. As Marcus read, his face turned a terrible shade of purple. Where did you get these? He choked out, his voice all thin and tight. From the very people y'all destroyed. Now here's my offer. You are going to sell Mrs. Wheeler's mortgage back to me for the original price. Then you're going to pack your bags and get out of this valley for good. And if you refuse, these papers go straight to the judge tomorrow morning, along with what I have to say about that fire you likely set on her property. I can prove enough to make your lives mighty, mighty difficult. Y'all spent years preying on good people who couldn't fight you. But you made a big mistake when you went after Will Carver. She ain't alone anymore. The whole street went dead quiet. The crowd just held its breath. Marcus stood there frozen while his brothers started looking awful nervous. You think you've won? Marcus growled, his voice low and mean. Colt didn't even flinch. I think I can make it too costly for you to stay. It's your choice. Walk away with what you have, or lose everything in a fight you just can't win. After a long, hard moment, Marcus let out a laugh. Fine, take your widow. He got on his horse and turned to his brothers, yelling, but remember this. Ramsey, he called, this is not over. The Garretts rode off, leaving the town whispering, but Colt only saw Willa waiting for him. Her face was impossible to read. That was brave, she finally said, or just plain stupid. Probably both. Are you mad at me? Mad? You just faced down those men for me. For us, he corrected. A small smile appeared. You know they are going to come back. I know. He took her hand. I am done running. Whatever happens, I am staying with you. She looked deep into his eyes, searching. Well, somebody has to keep you from trouble. Then right there, she rose on her toes and kissed him. Their long ride back to the cabin was quiet, only the sound of snow crunching under stars. A peaceful feeling finally settled between them. He helped her down from her horse at the door. You should come in, she said. I have coffee. He could see the years of hope in her eyes. I am sure, she whispered. I have been for a while. The cabin was warm from the glowing fire. He caught her hand before she stoked the flames. Wait, he said softly, turning her to face him. I need you to know something first. Know what? She asked, her voice low. He gently placed her hand over his heart. This has beaten for you since I was 18. Tears glistened in her eyes in the firelight. I want us to work through it all, together. What I'm saying is I love you, Willa Carver. I want to spend my whole life proving it. And I want to marry you. The words just hung there in the quiet cabin. Willa just looked at him, her face a perfect mystery. For a second, Colt's heart sank. Then she let out a bright, joyful laugh. Colt Ramsey, she said, shaking her head with a smile. You are the most bull-headed man I have ever known. Well, is that a yes? He asked, a grin creeping onto his face. It's a not tonight, she answered softly. There are still things to sort out. She stepped closer, her breath warm against his skin. What I am saying is stay. Stay with me tonight. And in the morning, she whispered, we'll figure out the rest of it together. Colt looked into her storm gray eyes and felt the last wall around his heart turn to dust. Together, he repeated. When she kissed him, it was a promise, deeper than words. Outside, the winter wind howled, but they didn't hear a thing. Wrapped up in each other's arms, Colt and Willow were finally home. The long winter finally began to loosen its hold on the valley. February brought bright sunshine that melted the snow into rushing creeks. The cattle came out from their shelters, hungry for the first signs of green. Everywhere Colt looked, he saw life coming back to the ranch. He saw birds nesting in the barn and wildflowers pushing through the last bits of snow. It felt like the world itself was promising him a fresh start. He woke up in Willow's cabin just like he had for the past 6 weeks. The fire was down to embers, and the air was crisp and cold. But Willow was warm beside him, her head resting on his shoulder. Her hair looked like spilled honey across the pillow. 6 months ago, he'd shown up expecting to find only ghosts. Now he had this incredible second chance he could hardly believe was real. You're staring, she murmured, her eyes still closed. Can't help it, he said. You're just worth staring at. She smiled. It's the truth, he said. Her storm gray eyes opened. What time is it? Up so early. Couldn't sleep, darling. Just thinking about good things. He smiled. About our future, he said softly. A flicker of hope filled her eyes. I went and saw Harold Finch. The ranch mortgage is back with me. It's all done. The land is safe now. You never told me. I had to be certain. It is your land now, Willa. He watched her shoulders finally to relax. I am speechless, she whispered, stunned. You gave me everything back to me. My home, my future, she cried softly. You gave all that back to me, too. You showed me what's worth having. We found each other. Let's make it official. He then reached for a small box. Inside, a ring sparkled. She gasped. A simple gold band, 1 diamond. It was my mother's, he said quietly. My dad gave it to her. He kept it. Her eyes filled up with tears. Colt, I will wait if you need more time. But I want you to have this, Willa. You have always been the only one. Marry me, he whispered with all his heart. Not to save you, because I love you. My future is with you in it. Her smile was absolutely radiant. Yes. Yes, you impossible man. I will marry you. Did you really think I'd say no? She laughed, pulling him into a kiss. It was a kiss full of love that they had held back for far too long. When they finally pulled apart, she held out her hand. Well, put it on me, she said, beaming. Colt's hands trembled as he did. The ring slid onto her finger like it was made for her. Oh, it's beautiful, she whispered. You're beautiful, he answered, kissing her hand. You're my everything. Willow laughed and playfully pushed him back. Stop it, you. We have things to do. Though work can wait, he grinned. Work never waits, she replied, but she was still smiling wide. Besides, she said, getting dressed, we've got a wedding to plan. And people to tell. Who should we tell first? He asked. She stopped and looked at him. With a twinkle in her eyes, she said, everyone, I want to tell the whole world. That news tore through Copper Bluff like a flash flood. Soon everyone knew Colt and Willow were engaged. By the next morning, there wasn't a single person in the valley who hadn't heard the news. Most folks were mighty happy about it. The older generation remembered them as kids. They all recalled how those two used to look at each other. They nodded and said it was about time. They believed it was high time those two found their way back to each other. The younger crowd just loved the story of it all. The son returning home to win back his true love. It was better than any storybook, and they were all for it. Of course, not everyone was thrilled. A few old-timers held a grudge against the Ramseys, and some girls were sad Colt was taken. But mostly the whole town gave them their blessing. You've done well, Walter told Colt in the barn one night. The old foreman had more lines on his face, but his eyes were still sharp as a tack. Your father, he said, he would be so proud of you. Colt stopped his work. He looked up at the old man. You really think so? Walter just nodded. Son, I know so. Your daddy Silas wasn't an easy fella. He made his share of mistakes, but he loved you. In his own tough way, he loved you more than anything. Colt asked, more than this ranch? No, Walter said, shaking his head. He didn't love the ranch more. He built it all for you, huh? Every single thing he did, every late night with the books, was for you, to leave you something that would last. Colt's throat felt tight. Then why did he run me off? Walter's voice got real gentle. Because he was afraid. Afraid of losing control, afraid you'd mess up. He thought he knew what was best. When he finally realized he was wrong, he thought it was too late. But he tried to make it right, son, paying Willow's mortgage. That was his way of trying to give you a fresh start. Colt held the worn leather. I know, I've read his letter. I've memorized it and I'm trying to forgive. But all that lost time, he couldn't finish. Grief ain't a straight road, Walter said. It just circles back on you. That's part of being a person. He put a steady hand on Colt's shoulder. You're here now, building something new and good. That's all a man can do. Thank you, Walter. Walter just grinned. Don't thank me yet. You still have a wedding to get through, and let me tell you, they're harder than any cattle drive. But their planning went along just fine. They wanted a simple ceremony, and they didn't see a reason to wait. Spring was coming, and they'd lost enough time already. The date was set for the third Saturday in April, when all the wildflowers would be in bloom. They get married in a grove, right on the line between their two properties. A place where the creek runs cold under the big old oak trees. Martha dove into the preparations with more energy than a youngster. The main house was soon bustling with sewing and the smell of baking pies. You'd think she was marrying off her own daughter, Colt said to Willa. Well, she practically raised you, Willa reminded him. Just let her. I'm not complaining, he said. Willa smiled. It's nice, ain't it? Having folks who care enough to fuss over you. He put an arm around her. It is. The weeks before the wedding were quiet and good. Colt and Willa found their rhythm. They worked the ranch, planned their future, and spent evenings by the fire. They talked about combining their herds and about their life in 5 years, or 10. For the first time in a long while, the future felt like a welcome friend. But Colt knew there was one last piece of business he had to handle. He told Willa about his plan one gray morning over their breakfast. I need to ride into Helena, he said, to the Territorial Bank. She looked up, her eyes full of questions. About what? Those loans they denied you. Willa frowned. Colt, that is ancient history. We do not need their money. He took her hand. To him, no, we don't. But they turned you down because you were a woman alone. They told you that you were nothing without a man to back you. That's just plain wrong. It was wrong then and it's wrong now, Willa. I'm not about to yell at bankers. He smiled. No, I'm going to vouch for you on the record and for all to hear. You'll get a line of credit in your own name as Willa Carver, a businesswoman. She stared at him. They'll never do that. Oh, they will if I make them. Colt's jaw set firm. I've got enough money in that bank to keep them real happy. And seeing you get respect is what will make me happy. Colt, she whispered. I know, but I want to, he said, squeezing her hand. You've fought your whole life. I can't change the past, but I can sure help change the future for you. And it starts right now. A slow smile finally spread across her face. You are truly impossible, she said. He grinned, stubborn too. That too. She got up and came around to him. The best man I've ever known. She kissed him long and deep. When she pulled back, her eyes were shining. Go on to Helena. Do what you need to. Then you come on home to me. Always, he promised. The trip took 4 days. The bank was a grand stone building right in the middle of town, on all marble. It had brass fixtures and that quiet feel of old money. Colt wore his best suit. He walked right in and asked to see the director. The meeting was short but good. The director was a stout man named Henderson, with a big mustache and suspicious eyes. He was dismissive at first, but his attitude changed when Colt mentioned his accounts. It changed even more when Colt suggested he might move his business someplace else. I'm sure we can work something out, Henderson said, his eyes suddenly greedy. What exactly are you thinking, Mr. Ramsey? Credit for Mrs. Willow Wheeler. In her own name, based on her land and livestock, not tied to me. And I reckon you'll find her value is considerable. Henderson frowned. Well, that's irregular. Then your policies need updating, Colt finished for him. Mrs. Wheeler is one of the best ranchers in the valley. Her stock is the finest. Any bank would be lucky to have her. Colt leaned in, his voice quiet but like steel. Let me be clear. In 3 weeks, she will be my wife. If this bank won't do business with her fairly, it won't do business with me. And that will be a mighty significant loss for you. Henderson's face turned from shock to calculation. Fine, I'll review the application myself, Henderson finally said. We'll find a way to help Mrs. Carver. Colt stood and offered his hand. I look forward to it, Colt said, sealing the deal with a firm handshake. 3 weeks later, a letter arrived at Willa's little cabin. She read it twice, hardly believing her eyes. Her loan was approved. How in the world did you do this? She asked Colt that night. I just reminded them of a few things, he said with a little smile. That underestimating Willa Carver is a mighty big mistake. She threw her arms around him, laughing and crying. I could just kiss you or kill you. I vote for kissin'. She pulled back, her eyes full of a powerful love. Thank you for believing in me when I had stopped believing in myself. That's what partners do, he said simply. And in 3 weeks, it's going to be permanent. Their wedding day was bright and clear. Colt stood in a sunlit grove waiting for her. The ground was a carpet of purple, yellow, and white wildflowers. It seemed like half of Copper Bluff was there in their Sunday best. Walter, his best man, stood right there at his side. The old foreman wore a suit from another time, but he stood proud. You nervous? He asked. Terrified, Colt admitted with a shaky breath. Good, Walter nodded. That's how you know it's real. Reverend Thomas stood before them, Bible in hand. She's coming, someone whispered. The whole crowd turned, and there she was, walking right toward him. Ben Tucker gave her away. She wore a simple, beautiful white gown. Martha had made it from fabric ordered special from San Francisco. Her hair was loose, falling over her shoulders like waves of gold. But it was the look on her face that made Colt's heart stop cold. She was radiant, looking at him with a love so pure it made his eyes burn. She reached him, and they stood face to face, holding hands. There was nothing between them but the promise they were fixing to make. Dearly beloved, the Reverend began, we are here today to join Colt and Willa. The preacher's words washed over Colt like a gentle song. For the first time in years, his heart felt steady and sure. Do you, Colton, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold, from this day forward, for better or worse? I do, Colt said, his voice strong and without a hint of doubt. And the preacher turned to Willa, asking if she would take this man, to love and to cherish through sickness and through health. Her eyes never left his. I do, she said, sealing their future. Then I pronounce you husband and wife. Reverend Thomas smiled. You may kiss the bride. He pulled her in for a kiss that tasted of joy and forever. The crowd's happy cheers rose up, but he hardly noticed them. In that moment, there was only Willa, his wonderful wife. The party that followed was the biggest Copper Bluff had seen. Tables were heavy with food the town's good women had made. There was roast beef, fresh-baked bread, and pies of every kind. A fiddler played jigs and waltzes while folks danced on the grass. Colt and Willa moved through the crowd, accepting well wishes. People who had watched them grow up and even gossiped about them. They all came forward now with smiles, putting old troubles aside. I never thought I'd see it, Martha said, dabbing her eyes. She's the finest there is, Colt said, hugging his old nurse. Oh, go on, she beamed. Save that sweet talk for your wife. As the sun began to set, Colt watched the celebration. He saw Willa dancing, her face glowing with pure happiness. The sight made his chest ache with a feeling he couldn't name. She's quite something, isn't she? It was Harold Finch at his elbow. The lawyer looked mighty uncomfortable in his Sunday best. Mr. Ramsey, he started, I reckon I owe you an apology. For the business with the Garretts. Selling that mortgage was wrong. Colt studied him for a long moment, feeling that old anger stir. But Colt knew Finch had been caught in a tough spot. It is over, Colt said, and it all worked out for the best. Mr. Finch, On my wedding day, the past is just the past. The attorney breathed a deep sigh of relief. My wife believes in second chances, and I am learning from her. He shook the man's hand. Willa walked over. What was that about? Just making peace, he said, wrapping an arm around her waist. This has been the most perfect day, she said, leaning against him. I keep waiting for something to go wrong. It will not, he promised. We've had our share of wrong. We had 6 long years of it. He gestured to the party. Now it is our turn for something right. Her eyes softened up. When did you get to be such a philosopher? Long nights on the trail make you think. I thought about you. Always you. As the stars came out, they slipped away from the party. They got on their horses and rode toward home. Ramsey Ridge was their home now, where they would build their future. Willa's cabin would just be a base for the eastern pastures. The main house was quiet when they arrived, lit by a few lamps. They stopped on the porch, pausing at the front door. This is it, Colt said. The beginning of everything, Willa agreed, then smiled playfully. You know, there is a tradition. The groom carries the bride inside. It is supposed to keep evil spirits from following her in. Well, we cannot have evil spirits. He swept her up in his arms. With a laugh, he carried her through the door and into their new life. The weeks that followed were a time of happiness and adjustment. They were both stubborn, so they argued, but they always learned to compromise. The ranch hands took a shine to Willa almost immediately. She earned respect by leading by example, not by just giving orders. In a month, even the old-timers who worked for Silas called her ma'am. You have got a gift, Colt told her one evening on the porch. Handle, folks, Willa. It's truly something special to see. A woman ranching alone has to learn quick, I reckon, she said softly. It is more than that. It is the heart in you, the thing that makes folks trust you. I trusted you from the second we met, even before all this. And when did you love me? About 5 minutes after you opened your mouth, he grinned. The moment you told me my dancing was merely adequate. I knew then. She chuckled. It was barely that. See? I just tell it straight. And that is exactly why I love you. Because you are always you. You are the truest soul I have ever known. They sat as the sky turned to dusk. The evening sounds of the ranch settled in all around them. A lone coyote called out in the distance. I have been thinking, Willa finally had said, about what we are building here. I want this ranch to stand for something, Colt. Something that lasts, a real legacy for the folks who come after us. Maybe a school for the children, or a fund to help other women get a start. Maybe just showing everyone it is possible to build something new from the past. Colt considered her words. Well, I think you are going to do all of it. And a whole lot more. You are going to change this valley, Willa. Not by force, but by being who you are. And I will be right here with you. Especially when you are being stubborn, he teased. That is when you shine. She leaned into him, and they watched the first stars begin to dot the sky. That spring turned into a summer of great prosperity for the ranch. The combined herds thrived, and their calves drew buyers from across the territory. Soon, the Ramsey Ridge name was known far and wide for its quality stock. The bank in Helena turned out to be a fine partner, just as Henderson promised. The line of credit he approved gave Willa the freedom to expand the operation. She told Colt one night, "You want to know the very best part of all this? It is not the money itself. It is what it all stands for. Every deal we make proves they were wrong to doubt a woman could do this job. Better than most men," Colt corrected her. She just gave him a little smile. I had good teachers, he said, taking her hand. My father, Walter, and now you. And squeezed his hand. We make a good team. The best, he thought. That summer brought peace in other ways, too. Old grudges that had simmered for years finally cooled down, seeing what Colt and Willa were building. Neighbors who'd been fussing for generations started talking again. The long, dark shadow of the Ramsey-Carver feud was at last starting to fade away. Even the Garrett brothers, who had slunk off after their run-in with Colt, were moving on. Word came to Copper Bluff they had sold out and were heading west to California for a fresh start. Good riddance, Walter said when he heard the news. This valley is better off. Maybe, Colt said thoughtfully, or maybe they'll find a way to be better men. People can change. Walter gave him a long, hard look. You sure have. The Colt who left 6 years ago wouldn't have said that. The Colt who left 6 years ago was a fool, he chuckled. Thankfully, I've learned a few things. As summer ended and the leaves began to turn, Colt noticed a change in Willa. She seemed more tired than usual, a little weary. She passed on her favorite foods and had a new softness, a glow he couldn't quite name. He didn't say anything at first, not wanting to get his hopes up too soon. But he watched, and he wondered, and a quiet hope began to grow in his heart. One evening, Willa asked him to sit down. "I need to tell you something," she said. His heart jumped. "Is everything okay, darling?" "Everything is wonderful," she said, her voice soft. "More bar than wonderful." "Then what is it?" he asked. She took his hand and gently placed it on her belly. "This," she whispered. He looked at her, his mind racing. "Willa, I'm pregnant, Colt. We're going to have a baby." The whole world just seemed to stop. A baby, their baby, made from their love. Are you sure?" His voice cracked with emotion. "I'm sure," she laughed through happy tears. "The doctor confirmed it yesterday." He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. "A baby," he whispered. "Are you happy?" she asked. He pulled back to look at her. Happy doesn't even begin to cover it. "I was worried you might think it was too soon," she admitted. "Never too soon," he said fiercely. "I've wanted a family with you since forever." He kissed her deeply. "Thank you for this gift, for everything." They held each other as the sun set, painting the big Texas sky in brilliant colors. Two souls who found their way home, now looking at a future brighter than they ever imagined. "A boy or a girl?" she asked. "I don't care one bit," Colt said, "as long as the baby is healthy." He grinned. "And has your stubbornness. Lord help us then." They stayed out under the stars, talking about names and their new life. The future suddenly felt real, and for the first time, it felt right. Deep inside Colt, a cold, dark place finally felt a steady warmth. He was home. He was loved. Everything was exactly as it should be. The fall season deepened around them, painting the valley in red and gold. Colt had seen this happen his whole life, but this time was different. This autumn felt like a gift, a private celebration for them, and every colored leaf and painted sky seemed to be part of the blessing. It was a celebration of the life that he and Willa had built together. The news of Willa's pregnancy spread through the ranch like a wildfire. Martha took one look at Willa's glowing face and burst into happy tears. She immediately started planning the nursery with a joyful obsession. Walter shook Colt's hand with a grip that said more than words ever could. "A baby," the old man said, his voice thick with emotion. "After everything. Your father would have—" He trailed off, and Colt knew what he meant. The ranch hands were both excited and fiercely protective of Willa. These were the men who had watched him leave in disgrace years ago. Now they watched over Willa like she was the most precious thing on earth. Well, they made sure she never lifted anything heavy or worked too hard. "I'm pregnant, not dying," Willa told Jake one morning over a feed bucket. "Yes, ma'am," Jake said with a smile. "But Mr. Ramsey gave us orders." Willa turned to Colt with a look that could freeze a Texas summer. "I worked this land before you came back, and I am not about to stop now." "You told Walter," she said, crossing her arms. "And Walter told everyone. I know how this ranch works, Colt. Don't you forget it." He held his hands up in surrender. "Can you blame us for caring?" Her face softened. "No, but don't treat me like I'm made of glass." He pulled her in for a hug. "All right, how about we make a compromise? All right, you can help out, but you rest when you feel tired." "It's a deal," she said, and they sealed it with a sweet kiss. Her pregnancy went along real smooth as fall turned toward winter. The new town doctor, a young man named Patterson, made regular visits. He always said the baby's heartbeat sounded good and strong. "I'd say you're looking at a delivery late next spring," he told them. "Probably May." Willa smiled, thinking of the wildflowers that would be blooming. That was a mighty fine time for a little one to come into the world. Dr. Patterson agreed all that warmth and light would be good for them both. Later on, Colt found Willa at the window, watching the sun set. The frosty fields were bathed in orange and purple light. "What's on your mind?" "Everything, I guess," she said, leaning her head on his shoulder. "A year ago, I was all by myself, barely hanging on. Now look at us. We're married and getting ready for a baby. She thought for a second. The hard times made all this possible. If things had been easy, we wouldn't appreciate what we have now. Well, growing a baby gives you plenty of quiet time to think. Colt wrapped his arms around her, resting his hands on her belly. I've been thinking too, he said, about what to name the little one. He hesitated. If it's a boy, maybe Samuel, after my granddaddy. Samuel Ramsey, Willa tested the name. It's a strong name. I like it. And if it's a girl, she said, I'll choose her name. Grace, after my mother. She passed when I was 15, but she was the strongest woman I ever knew. Grace Ramsey, Colt nodded slowly. That's just beautiful. Grace or Samuel, Willa whispered, putting her hands over his. This child will have a lot to live for, he said, kissing her hair. That winter turned out to be the mildest anyone could remember. The storms were short, leaving behind snow that sparkled in the sun. The cattle stayed healthy and well-fed all through the season. It was almost like the land itself knew something wonderful was coming. Something good's on the way, Walter mused by the fire one evening. Making room? Martha snorted. Listen to you, getting all poetic. Just an observation, Walter said, his eyes twinkling. But Colt felt it too, a change in the air at the ranch. Every day, something new arrived for the baby. Then Colt found Walter in the barn, working on a secret. It was a beautiful oak cradle, nearly finished. Colt ran a hand over the smooth, perfect wood. Walter, this is amazing. I had no idea. Lots you don't know, son, Walter said, looking pleased. I made one just like it for your father. Silas was so proud, couldn't stop talking about his heir. He looked off for a moment. Hoped I'd live to see the next one. You'll see more than that, Colt promised. This baby needs a granddad. Walter's eyes got a little misty. Well, we'll see about that. Colt clapped his shoulder. Now, are you going to show me how to stain this thing? As winter faded, Colt thought more about his own father. He had read Silas's letter until he knew it by heart. He finally understood what his father had been trying to do. All the mistakes made a sad kind of sense now. He saw a man who loved his son but didn't know how to show it. And now, Colt felt a deep fear for his own child. I'm scared, he admitted to Willa one night in bed. He rested a hand on her belly, feeling the life inside. Scared I'll be like my father. Scared I'll mess it all up. Willa took his hand in hers. You won't, she said simply. How do you know, he whispered. Because you're asking the question, she said, turning to face him. Your father never wondered if he was wrong, but you do. That tells me everything I need to know. She kissed him gently. And you're not in this alone. We're in this together, Colt. When we mess up, we'll just learn and do better. When did you get so dang wise, he asked. She said, I always was. You just weren't listening. He let out a laugh, feeling the tightness in his chest loosen up. Well, I'm listening now. Good, she whispered. Now hush up and get some sleep. Tomorrow's a big day. Yes, ma'am. But he stayed awake a long while, his hands on her belly, just feeling for that little life. Every tiny flutter felt like a brand new world of hope was about to begin. And that hope felt like spring finally pushing its way through a long Montana winter. By mid-April, the change was real. The snow was gone and the creeks ran high. The pastures were green with new grass, a promise of good things to come. Willa's belly was just as full, round and enormous with their growing child. Moving around was a chore, but she was a determined woman, that was for sure. She had finally agreed to slow down, but still walk the property every single day. That baby will come when it's good and ready, Dr. Patterson had told them. I'd say you've got another 2 or 3 weeks, but they make their own schedules. Well, that's mighty reassuring, Willa had said, her voice as dry as dust. As it turned out, that baby had its own ideas about timing. It all started in the early hours of May 15th, not with a big commotion, but a soft gasp. Colt, she whispered, her voice tight but calm. I do believe it's time. He was on his feet in a heartbeat. Are you sure? The doctor said. I'm sure, she winced, holding her belly. The pain started about an hour ago. An hour? Colt pulled on his boots, his hands shaking like a leaf. Why in the world didn't you wake me? Because I knew you'd panic, she said. I'm not panicking. Your hands are shaking, she pointed out gently. All right, I'm panicking a little, but I'm still gonna get that doctor. Don't you worry. Martha's probably on her way. That woman has a sixth sense. Willa gave him a small, pained smile. Now go on. I'll be just fine. The next few hours were a blur of hope and worry all tangled up together. Martha showed up and took charge right away, barking orders and setting things up. Dr. Patterson arrived not long after, calm as could be, and got right to work. They sent Colt out to the hallway, where he paced back and forth like a caged animal. First babies take their sweet time, Walter said, handing him coffee. Ours? Colt paced, but a sharp cry from the bedroom stopped him cold. Walter grabbed his arm. Hold on, son, that's just part of it. That Willa is a tough one. The best thing you can do now is just let them work. I ought to be with her. Walter's grip stayed firm. You will be, son, when it's time. Trust me on this, Colt. I've been around this block before. Colt knew the old foreman was right. He was no good to anyone, just a bundle of nerves. He wanted to bust in there and hold her hand, but he knew he couldn't. So he waited, pacing the floorboards and listening to every sound. The coffee tasted like dirt as the hours dragged on. He heard Willa's cries and the doctor's calm voice and prayed it would all be okay. The long day slowly turned into late afternoon. Then, just as the clock struck 4, a brand new sound filled the house. It was a tiny cry, high and clear. A baby's first breath. His heart nearly stopped. Martha opened the door, her face wet with happy tears. It's a girl, she beamed. A beautiful, healthy baby girl. Colt was frozen solid for a moment. A daughter, his and Willa's. Can I? Was all he could manage to say. Go on in, Martha said, stepping aside. They're waiting for you. He walked in, feeling like he was in a dream. Willa looked worn out but so happy. Her eyes shined with a joy so pure it made his heart ache. In her arms was the most perfect little thing he'd ever laid eyes on. Come and meet your daughter, she whispered. He sat down beside her, gentle as could be. The baby was a miracle. He was afraid to even breathe too loud. Her little face was all red and scrunched up, with a head full of dark hair. When she yawned, he saw the tiniest pink gums. She was beautiful. She's just perfect, Colt breathed out. Willa smiled. She sure is. You want to hold her? He hesitated, feeling all thumbs, but Willa gently placed the tiny bundle in his arms. Just support her head, she said softly. You're a natural. He cradled his daughter, amazed at how light she felt. Well, hello there, he whispered. His voice cracked as he whispered, Hello, Grace. Her tiny fingers gripped his thumb with surprising strength. All the walls he had built around his heart crumbled. Tears streamed down his face. I'll take care of you. Both of you for the rest of my life, he vowed. Willa touched his cheek gently. I know, that's why I said yes. As the sun set, they sat together, a family finally complete. Outside, the familiar sounds of the ranch drifted on the breeze. But inside the room, there was only a quiet, settled peace. Grace fell asleep in her daddy's arms, breathing softly. He memorized her perfect face as she dreamed. What do you reckon she's dreaming about? He asked. Something wonderful, Willa said. We will make sure of it. She smiled at him. Together. That one word meant everything. The weeks that followed were a blur of love and sleepless nights. Martha and the doctor said Grace was a good baby. She just watched the world with eyes that seemed far too wise. She has your eyes, Colt told Willa one morning. And your stubborn streak, she countered with a little laugh. She wouldn't let go of her rattle for anything yesterday. That is not stubbornness. That is determination, he grinned. The three of them fell into a simple, easy rhythm. It was a life of sweet exhaustion and small victories. Colt learned to pace the floor with a fussy baby at 3 a.m. And through it all, their love for each other deepened. It was not a fire anymore, but a steady, warm hearth. A love that could weather any storm or outlast any drought. One night, watching them by the fire, Colt spoke quietly. I did not know it could be like this, he said. So full. I was empty for so long. But now I am finally home. To find my place, just filling the emptiness with work, whiskey, and whatever else I could find. and none of it did a lick of good. It never even came close. But now I feel like I could just burst, like there is so much good inside me it can hardly fit. He shook his head. That probably does not make a bit of sense. It makes all the sense in the world. Willa shifted Grace to her shoulder and started that gentle patting that always brought on a satisfied little burp. I felt that exact same way for years. After Tom passed, after my whole world fell to pieces, I kept telling myself I did not need anybody, that I was better off alone. But I was just lying to myself. We sure get good at that, do not we? Too good, Colt smiled sadly. It took you coming home, making me face everything I had buried deep down, to finally see what I was missing, what I had been missing this whole time. Grace burped loud as you please, and both of them started to laugh. Well, she has got perfect timing, Colt pointed out. She gets that from her mama. That summer rolled in with a blazing Texas heat, and it brought along some changes that neither of them had ever expected. It all started with a letter from San Francisco, from one of Willa's sisters, the oldest one who had moved out west 15 years ago, and they had barely heard a word from her since. She wants to visit, Willa said, her voice sounding unsure. The letter trembled just a little in her hands. She heard about Grace, Lord knows how, and she wants to meet her. How would you feel about that? I honestly do not know. Willa set the letter on the table and walked to the window. Margaret and I, we were never very close. She left our home when I was just 12 years old, and she did not hardly look back. When our folks passed on, she sent a telegram with her condolences, but she did not bother to come to the funeral. Well, people change, Colt said in a gentle voice. Do they really? She turned to face him then. Or do they just get better at hiding their true self? I suppose it is sometimes both. Sometimes neither one. He came and stood right there beside her, taking her hand. You do not have to see her if you do not want to. I can write her back and make up some excuse. No, Willa shook her head real slow. No, I reckon I need to do this for Grace's sake. If nothing else, she deserves to know her kin, even the ones that I do not rightly understand. We will go on and invite her, together. Margaret Carver, who was now Margaret Chen after marrying a prosperous merchant, arrived in the heat of early July, stepping off the train in a dress that likely cost more than a rancher here makes in a whole month. She was a bit taller than Willa, with that same honey-colored hair, but with sharper features, and she moved with the careful way of a woman who had spent many years perfecting her image. Willa. She hugged her sister with a certain stiffness that told of long years in unfamiliar territory. You look different. Is that a good different or a bad different? Just different. Well, Margaret's eyes scanned over Willa's simple ranch dress, her work-worn hands, and the practical braid in her hair. You look like you belong out here. I do belong here. Yes. Something flickered across Margaret's face then. Maybe it was regret or maybe a hint of envy. I can see that. The visit was plenty awkward at first, as the two sisters sort of danced around years of silence and old hurts, but little Grace, as babies so often do, became the bridge between them. She is just beautiful, Margaret said, holding her niece for the very first time. Her voice, which was usually so measured, had grown soft. She has our mother's chin. I thought so too. Willa sat down beside her sister on the porch swing, watching as Grace made a grab for the pearl buttons on Margaret's dress. And a touch of our father's spirit. Father was stubborn, she smiled. Willa laughed. The fence feud. The tension between them eased. I am sorry I was gone. Willa finally asked her, why? I was selfish, she confessed. 18. I needed to run. But staying away got harder. You built a life that matters. I ran from where I belonged. Big words from a city girl. Margaret laughed. I have regrets. It is not too late, Willa said. I really could use a sister. She stayed for 3 whole weeks. The sisters finally made peace. And at the train, come back soon. I will. You all come visit. You did it, Willa, she said. You have our childhood dream. Do not ever let this go. I will not, Willa promised. Autumn came. A year passed. A year since Colt came home. It was a year of true healing. He surveyed their joined lands. The ranch was a great success. Peace settled over the valley. But it was more than profit. It was peace. He was home. Willa found him with Grace in her carrier. "Knew you'd be here," she said. "Just thinking. Good thoughts or bad?" "Good ones." He touched Grace's cheek, her eyes serious like her mama's. "Thinking how different everything is now." He smiled. "Different in the best ways. You know, I first came back here, fixing to sell it all. Take the money and just disappear. I had a feeling," she said. He shook his head. "I thought it was duty that kept me here. But I know now it was home. I was coming home to you." Willa took his hand. "Even when you were fighting it, well, you are here now." "I am, and I am here for good. No more running, Willa. This is where we belong." They sat together as the sun painted the sky in gold and rose. Grace cooed at the light. "She likes the sunset." "Of course, she is our girl." Shadows stretched long across the valley as the first stars appeared. Down below, a coyote howled, and the cattle settled in for the night. For the family on the ridge, Colt knew everything had changed forever. The broken pieces of his past were now something new and strong. He came home to settle his father's land and found the woman he loved. But in the end, he found something more valuable. He found himself. "Ready to go on home?" Willa asked. He looked at his wife and his daughter. "Honey, I'm already home," he said, and he was, for always.